Welcome to Confessions of an Entrepreneur, powered by RG. My name is Carl Swansbury, and I'm thrilled today to have Alfie Dewey on my podcast. For those of you who don't know Alfie, Alfie was born and bred here in the Northeast, and having spent 15 years practicing as a priest, decided to scratch the itch he'd carried for years, and since has become a very high-profile comedian. He's become someone who has featured in many sitcoms, including the likes of Coronation Street. He also now does a lot of comparing significant events. He is a drawer and an artist, and someone who absolutely loves to champion the Northeast business, and of course some of the significant charities we have here in the region. I'm really looking forward to spending some time with Alfie to understand more about his why, some of the obstacles he's had to overcome, and of course, perhaps some of the things that he wishes he knew 40 years ago, which he knows now. I'm delighted you can join us on this Confessions of an Entrepreneur's podcast, as I do truly believe we are in for a treat. Alfie, can we just start by acknowledging how genuinely excited I am to have you, Alfie Dewey, on my Confessions of an Entrepreneur podcast today. Welcome.
Can I say I'm very excited? I never take these for granted. I get very warmed up and ready and have a think about what might come up and hopefully give you something new that I haven't give another interviewer, Carl.
Thanks, you. Well, I do appreciate you joining me on the podcast, Alfie. And of course, I'd like to start by asking quite an odd question, perhaps, but I thought it would kick off the conversation. Obviously, you are an author. You are a comedian. You've been on our TV screens for decades. I can keep going. Question. What is the one thing you want anyone who comes across you to take away? What is it you're trying to give people as an impression or a feeling or an experience, Alfie?
Well, right now, I would say at this particular time, when people ask me, what do you do? What have you done? They don't know anything about me. I start to list a few things to try and summarize it.
Yes.
And then I end up just ending with basically anywhere where there's a microphone. So whether it's giving a talk, whether it's on a podcast, whether it's doing a comedy club, I like microphones. I like talking. That's why I've come up with this hashtag Speakeasy Guy. I want to make other people's experience of talking as good and as enjoyable as mine. So at the minute, I'm a speaking coach, but I still do a bit of comedy. I still do a bit of acting. I still do a bit of lots of other stuff. But I'm trying to narrow things and just focus things on the speaking path because I'm loving it.
Okay, and I've read a few quotes that people have said about you, and the one thing is, actually, Alfie Dewey just makes you appreciate being alive.
Yeah.
That's a pretty awesome feedback, right?
But how annoying at the same time, Carl. It's just, and I used to have this tag, and some people still say it, especially comedy friends. Nicest guy in comedy, nicest guy in and who wants to be described as nice? Imagine that on your gravestone. Nice guy. I mean, it's a lovely thing to be thought of as being nice, but I do get that sometimes my level of positivity and being upbeat can annoy the hell out of a lot of people as well. So I'm always aware of that, and I always try not to overdo it, and I try and not tone it down, but just be aware that it can sometimes irritate people as well, because it's not like that for a lot of people. And a lot of people who do struggle will see someone like me and just go, I wish he'd jump out of a window or something. You know?
But you know what a great way to be described.
Yeah.
I think there's worse ways to describe someone than being just an all-round great guy.
Yeah,
for
it's
sure.
who I am. It's not an act. It's pretty much who I am.
So take me back, because of course you're sat here today as someone who's highly profiled, highly achieved, but of course we all start somewhere. So it would be great to understand a little bit about your education, Alfie, and what fundamentally set you up for the career that you've enjoyed since.
Well, at first thought, Carl, I would have said none of it set me up for what I do now, but in a way it all set me up at the same time for what I do now. So as a kid, I was brought up in a coal mining village about 7 miles east of Durham.
Oh.
And my dad was a coal miner. For a brief time when I was born, he ran a working men's club.
Right,
You
okay.
know, really big. Thornley Working Men's Club was one of those big boozy sort of establishments where all the coal miners would go and drink
Totally.
between shifts or between work. And they were very, very hard-working people. And it was a hard-working job working down the pits. So you needed to let off steam. So that's where you went to do it.
Oh.
And our club was so big, the concert room had lots and lots of artists that you would have known from years ago who ended up on telly. Paul Daniels.
Wow.
Do you remember Kelly Marie? My
Yeah.
head is
Oh
in a
my-
spin. That doo doo doo. She played that. It was a big club on the circuit, so it had a big concert room. And I can't remember this, Carl, but as a child, as a toddler, I would go on stage while the cleaners were sort of getting ready for the night shows, and I'd be playing with a microphone and doing Tom Jones impressions.
Gosh.
And I can't remember that, but as I grew up in the village, usually old blokes would come up to me and say, "Oh, you were great at impressions. You used to do impressions when you were little." So I was always doing voices, always happy to get on stage. I probably always liked showing off a little bit.
Where do you think that came from? Because of course, as you say, your father worked down the pits, so
Yeah.
probably a very hardworking, very
Yeah.
honest, very grounded man.
Completely.
Perhaps not a guy who you'd see on a stage behind a microphone.
Well, you did.
Oh,
So
talk to me about that, Steve.
my dad would, you know, after a few sherbets, would get up there, and so there was an organist in the club who could play the background music to anything you could get up there, and he would just follow you. And my dad used to get up. He would usually sing that old Black Magic,
Good.
and he would sing that, and he'd be getting in the mood to go out. He always wore a shirt and tie, and he loved show business. My dad, he absolutely loved classic movies. He loved quality comedy, and I used to. One of my memories, my dad didn't take me fishing or to a football match, or you know, in that way. Sort of some dads are really good, but my dad was brilliant at sitting on the couch with me. He was like a DVD commentary, and he would tell me what was good. So we would watch things, but we would always chat. My dad would say, "He's a really good actor. Watch what he's doing here. This is a really good singer, and this is why." So I grew up loving classic movies. I grew up loving Frank Sinatra and all of those big band singers of that era. Sunday mornings were, you know, one was sat around a record player listening to songs. And so while we didn't have other things that other kids had, I'll cherish that, because that was something I didn't realize was a kind of education in entertainment for me.
Well, huge. And did your dad ever pursue music, comedy, art professionally, or was it just a real big passion?
He was a great singer, but he would never, it wasn't something people in our village sort of thought was possible. So,
Right, okay.
so I would watch, I would listen to the radio with my mum. My mum was a big radio fan. So I would listen to the radio, and I would record my own radio shows on cassette,
Wow.
but never ever thinking I would ever have a chance of being on radio.
Right. It was for fun only.
It was
at that-
purely for fun. But I would have dreams about it. But that didn't happen to kids from a pit village like Thornley. And the same with TV, and we would watch sitcoms, me and my dad, and I would think I'd love to be in a sitcom, but that didn't happen to kids like me. I've been in two. I would watch Opportunity Knocks and watch all these talent shows, new faces. Think I would love to be on one of them, but that would never happen to someone like me. I was on Britain's Got Talent, and I think that background, while it on one side told me I wasn't capable of doing those things, it nurtured me to do those things.
And we'll talk a little bit about how you create opportunity shortly, and of course, how you improve your odds of success. But just speaking a little bit about your upbringing, so of course, a pit villages where you were
Yep.
brought up. You've mentioned your dad was a hard worker down the pit, and occasionally having a sherbet or two
Yeah.
for the local
I'll be honest, I
work.
think my mum was a harder worker.
I was going to ask, what did your mum do?
Yeah, so my mum did everything. So my mum
Right.
always had about 3 jobs on the go. She would paint and decorate people's houses.
Gosh.
In the mornings before that, she would go and light people's fires. She was once a school caretaker, and then she'd go and sort of put wallpaper on people's houses. And then at night, she'd go out and work behind the bar. Did it for years. She had multiple jobs, and she's 78, and she still goes out, cleans someone's house. Complete inspiration. I think I got my, I don't know, think I'm a workaholic, but I think I definitely got my sense of industry from her and just going out and earning money.
Yes, yes. And I guess that sort of work ethic, that appreciation that the harder you work, the better your odds are. I think it's really important, and I do think it is something that is taught early.
It is. And as a kid, I'm often sort of feel like I'm the odd one out in the business world, and I've come to it late. And when I host things like the Entrepreneurs Forum, we've got the spring conference coming up. I love it. It's one of my favorite types of event. I love multi-speaker events. I love interviewing business people. But I always use this line that when I grow up, I want to be one of you, because I don't feel like I am. But when I look back, as a kid, I was always out making money. I had every paper round going. I think I had 4 paper rounds. I was out carols singing. I was out digging the headmaster's garden for money, and I was just always trying to make money, always trying to stay busy.
And of course, that would be, the true definition of an entrepreneur. How you create the value from nothing. Setting up initiatives, setting up businesses. So actually, that's really what you've always done, isn't it? But let me ask though, you said something there which surprised me. You sort of implied, Alfie, that perhaps you don't feel worthy sometimes when you're interviewing business owners who've perhaps built big businesses. Just talk to me about that.
I do. It's not the people I'm interviewing that I don't feel worthy. It's usually a business audience where I look out and I think, you have all created a business.
Yes.
And I interviewed for years on the radio. I interviewed pop stars, politicians, Olympians, Oscar winners, and generally none of them came close to interviewing business people on a stage, because the passion from a founder, a creator, they put their life on the line. They put everything on the line to make something happen. So they care about it and they talk about it. So my standout interviews, when I look back, are not people like Colin Firth or Jerry Halliwell. They're people like Sir John Timpson, or the guy who invented Hotel Chocolat, Angus Thirlwall, or Heather Mills was just absolutely mesmerizing and surprised the audience as well.
Yeah, well, it is, as you say, I think for anyone to set up and scale up successfully a business, it has to be an obsession, a healthy
the
obsession.
risk involved is huge.
Agreed. Fascinating. And we'll pick this back up a little later, Alfie, because there's some really
Sorry, I'm taking you all over the place.
No, you're not.
Very good, isn't it?
Thoroughly enjoyable. So obviously, I'm now back in the pit village in Durham. You on a Saturday cause mischief on the stage, grabbing the microphone, causing havoc for your father, who probably wants you and Alfie to sit down. How do you go from there to professionally studying arts at university? How did you go from that point to university?
A really weird departure, again, even for someone from my village. I wanted, when I was 7, my teacher said, draw in your book what you want to be when you grow up. And I drew a Catholic priest.
Wow.
Now,
I didn't know that.
Well, I trained to be a priest. So I, from a very young age, and I've looked back, Carl, and I've tried to work out where this came from. My dad was Catholic but didn't go to church. Had no interest. My mum wasn't Catholic, and yet I wanted to be a Catholic priest. Everyone else drew in the book a spaceman or a cowboy or a soldier, and it never went away. And I can only explain it by maybe thinking I was very boringly nice as a kid. So when I was doing a paper round, I'd be knocking on, old people's doors going, do you want me to get you some shopping and stuff like that? And I think they didn't have social workers when I was a kid. And I think maybe that might have been something I could have done with my sort of demeanour, seat sort of demeanour. And then my auntie took me to church and I saw the priest. And he was a kind of a social worker and went round doing nice things for people in the village. And also it's a bit showbiz, isn't it? He's got the gear on, he's got the captive audience, he's got the spotlight on him. So I don't know, maybe that's partly what it was. And that never went away. So the parish priest came round, the headmaster came round the house and said, we think you should have a few years in secondary school, Peterlee Comprehensive, before we let him pursue the dream of wanting to be a priest. But after 2 or 3 years, I still really wanted it. And they said, are you sure? And I went away to a mini Hogwarts, and I trained to be a priest for, 15 years.
Wow.
So I trained to be a priest, and then left to join a religious order. So I was a sort of a monk for 5 years, and did that till I was 30. So it was at the end of that I studied sort of arts and drama and stuff like that. Very bizarre.
Fascinating, not bizarre, Alfie. So just let me ask. So obviously you explained that the original reason you wanted to become a priest was because you could see that would give you the authority to be able to help people.
Yes, I think so.
In
I
short.
think so. Yeah.
And of course that's really inspiring. Did the 15 years allow you to do that? Did you feel it was a really selfless role that allowed you to support, help, nurture, be by the side of thousands of people, no doubt?
Massively. So I can't think of any other route through life where I would have gone into prisons, high security prisons, Durham, Frankland, hospitals, hospices, schools, with a role as a chaplain where you would be involved and you would be sort of shoulder to cry on, or people would come to you because you had a unique position.
Totally.
And it was something that really was useful when I went on the radio, and even now when I'm hosting a panel or a podcast or whatever, it informed me in ways that I didn't know. So we would be having discussions on the radio about prisons, and I think, well, I was in prison for 2 years. I got out in good behaviour. And it was, I remember getting the breakfast show, and a hardened journalist said to me, what do you know about journalism? And I thought, what do you know about showbiz? But actually, the path I took, trained to be a priest, was probably a fantastic way of equipping me for journalism, because I listened. It taught you to listen. It taught you to be aware, self-aware, and taught you to look for how things could change for the better. And in many ways, that's what a journalist is trying to do, is trying to listen and try to explain things. And that was my background. And sometimes that background meant I asked questions that journalists didn't ask, or came at it from a slightly more human way. So yeah, it was very, very useful, and still is.
And obviously, being a priest, I can see, gives you such a great opportunity to help and support others. But I'm probably right in assuming that from a income perspective, perhaps it's not the career that pays the best. So just
about poverty, we didn't have any money.
Well, there you are. So talk to me about that, because of course a lot of people watching this podcast may have true interest in wanting to pursue a career that allows them to do great things, but perhaps doesn't pay. And of course, money does make the world go round. So just talk to me about how you reconcile those two things.
In a way, taking live out poverty set me completely free from any kind of financial, I suppose, worries or interest. So in one way, you didn't have any money, but you never worried about it
Mhm.
because it didn't exist.
Yes.
So you didn't have a bank account. You didn't have. If I say when I was in Dublin in a monastery there, I used to go out and work in the soup kitchen 1 day a week. I had to even go and ask for the bus fare,
Wow.
and I would get the exact bus fare, get the bus to town, work in the soup kitchen, come back. But I never had to worry about bills. I never had to worry about a roof over my head or food. And there was always sort of shampoo in the stock cupboard. But you couldn't go out and buy a CD.
Sure. Yeah.
So,
So quite a basic
yes,
existence.
very basic. And I loved that. I loved that side of it. However, that did lead later on to a lot of chaos. Because when I left, and I can remember leaving the religious order, and Father John Gilheany, who was a real mentor, inspiration, he said to me, we're not like people out there. He says, you're gonna have to buy some clothes. He gave me some money out of petty cash. He said, you need better glasses, you need better
to integrate back into society, so to
we
speak.
just wore, sort of old secondhand jumpers and stuff like that. It was very sort of it didn't matter, what we wore. So I can remember going to Wembley Market and buying, because when I left, I was a student and I was at Middlesex University, so I thought I'll try and buy an outfit that will make me look like one of the students. So I can remember buying yellow jeans, an orange jumper, and all this stuff to look like a wacky student. But I looked like a children's TV presenter. I just got it all wrong because I had no taste. I've still got no taste.
Brilliant.
And so I was trying to be one of them, and yet I looked nothing like one of them.
Like Rupert the Bear.
Yes,
where you've just described.
I did. Honestly, it was bonkers. But yeah, and I've never fully sort of fit in, and me family still joke about my taste and my sort of, and a lot of that came from that. But also the financial side of things. I was not prepared for the world of, paying your tax properly and income um, and I still don't have enough respect for money. It's still one of my flaws. It's still one of my. I don't tend to put money front and center for anything, and I constantly have people telling you need to know your worth. You need to think about that a little bit more. And I always try to, and it's constantly a work in progress. And in a way, that's where that comment also comes from. When I grow up, I want to be one of you. Because you people like you have got a maturity about that and a skill. It's a skill, and it's a skill I'm still developing. So hopefully one day it will be as important as it should be. I've got a wife and 2 kids. I should really pay more attention to it. But in a way, I still do what I did as a kid. I work my way out of trouble or work my way into a place that's okay. But it could be much better.
And obviously, capitalism clearly isn't important to you. And I think that's genuinely not only quite unusual nowadays, but I think, incredibly inspiring, Alfie, because I guess you're doing things for different reasons. So let me ask on that basis, sort of how do you in your own mind quantify how successful you are? Because a lot of business owners will quantify how successful they are based on how much money they have in the bank, based on how big their house is. And these are all things that can only be afforded with capital. So how do you quantify how successful you are?
I believe that for me, success is pointless without significance. I did an event on Saturday with JT Dove, and they've had a 10-year relationship. I love it when businesses do this. They've had a 10-year relationship with the Children's Heart Unit at the Freeman Hospital, and they really believe in that cause. And they're passionate about it, and you can tell it's a genuine relationship. And they've just passed, over the 10-year mark, past the £250,000 threshold that they've raised as a business for that charity. They didn't have to do that.
No, that's awesome.
It was a Saturday afternoon. A lot of them probably didn't want to go out and spend a full Saturday, even though there was drink involved and a party and everything. But they all came, and it was double the size of the event we did last year.
Wow.
That gives me a buzz. because that to me is success plus significance. They've saved people's lives. They've saved children's lives.
Yeah, which is significant.
And lots of businesses do this, and a lot of people don't know that. They get really involved with the cause and really help make a difference. And I think, all right, it might be some kind of the selfish gene, and there's no such thing as true altruism. Maybe there isn't. I don't care. If people benefit along the way, that'll do me.
Obviously, everything you've said to this point does just demonstrate a real selflessness in everything you do and your outlook. Where does this sort of real urge to be socially responsible come from? Because it must come from somewhere.
I do think my background. My dad was a very old school, Morning Star socialist, because he was down the pit north of Scargill and all that sort of stuff. And I'm nowhere near that kind of stuff. I don't. If he was still alive, I think I'd have some very interesting conversations with him. But I just think that background was very, very much about, we're in a community and we should all do well. We'll all try and look after each other. And there was that sort of sense. When I was very small, I'm not sure if that's still the same, because the industry disappeared and the villages changed a lot.
That's right.
But definitely I would say my family generally were very generous, and overly generous in some ways. But I would say that's where it came from. And also then, 15 years in monastic religious life is that kind of giving a life of service. And it may be affected me in some ways, but in other ways it did me some good.
Totally. And of course, you decided after 15 years that perhaps longer term you didn't want to continue as a priest. What was the catalyst that made you decide to completely change track?
Showbiz.
Obviously.
Seriously, it was show business.
But
I've
where did that
got
come from?
I've got two stories. I'll tell you quickly because I've told them before. So one fella asked me to be his best man in Liverpool. I'd been a school chaplain in Liverpool before I moved to London to do a drama degree. And in Liverpool, this school was pretty tough. It was a poor school in a poor area, but this guy was just an inspirational drama teacher. And he said, "Will you be the best man?" I'd love to be. No,
Was that the first time you'd been a best?
No, I'd been a best man for a lad I trained to be a priest with.
Okay.
And I did a really crazy thing for Tommy's best man speech. I look back and think, what on earth were you thinking? I went into a shop and bought a load of rubbish items and put them in a carrier bag. And I got up to do the speech and I said, "Tommy means so much to me." And I just put my hand in. Whatever came out, I talked about. I was pretty fearless at the time with improvisation, and I would go, "Tommy reminds me of a potato." And I would have. Luckily, it worked, but it could have gone completely wrong. I can't believe what I did. I just thought it'd be a really exciting, fun, memorable thing to do. So that was the first time I was best man. And he was a Scouser as well. The second one was Stu. Stu asks me to be best man, and he says, "Uncle Eddie will be there." His Uncle Eddie was Eddie Braben, who wrote all of the scripts for Morecambe and Wise. As a kid, I loved Morecambe and Wise. Everybody in the country loved Morecambe and Wise. 30 million people watched them. 3 times the amount of people who watch Ant and Dec on a Saturday night watched Morecambe and Wise across. That's staggering, isn't it?
It is.
So he said, "Uncle Eddie will be there." He said, "He never laughs. Don't let that put you off." So I no longer did the wedding speech for Stu and Jane. I did the wedding speech for Eddie Braben. I thought, I have to make. He's the "and" in Morecambe and Wise. He wrote every. Yeah. So I did Best Man Speech, the musical. I wrote a 15-minute musical all about Stu and Jane to a backing track. I had it on cassette, And I had hats, wigs, I did impressions, I rehearsed the hell out of it, and I thought, I've got to make Eddie Braben laugh. And it was almost like a Morecambe and Wise feel to the routine, and it was filled with impressions. And at the end, he led a standing ovation.
Wow.
And he came over to me. He
Very
put
good.
photographs. He came over to me and he said, "What do you do, mate?" Because he was a Scouser. And I said, I'm a monk," which I was. And he said, "Forget that, show business." And that the clock started ticking then.
Yeah, right.
Simultaneously, I was doing a drama degree in London whilst living in the monastery, going out from Battersea up to North London to Golders Hill, where Middlesex University, and it was this is the late 90s, at the time, the only university to do a module in stand-up comedy. And immediately I loved it. It was a feeling I'd never had before, and a feeling I'd always wanted to have. And I can remember the night I first did stand-up comedy, and it still gives me goosebumps now.
And tell me how you actually felt when you first stood on stage in front of a live audience to deliver comedy. I mean, what was the feeling?
I've never been as nervous in my life. I can remember just before I went on stage, I remember where the door was, and there was a wall, and I was out like a boxer. I was jabbing the wall with my knuckles.
Just trying to sort of get the energy level up.
I woke up that day nervous.
Yeah.
I was on the loo all day.
Understandable.
Yeah, and I was, terrified. But as soon as I got on stage, because we were so well prepared and so well rehearsed, it was a feeling of ecstasy that I've never felt before, or occasionally since, but never quite that level. And I can remember everyone wanting to go to a house party, because there were lots of us doing this course. And it's the oldest comedy club in London. It's downstairs the King's Head in Camden. It's one of the best comedy clubs you'll ever go to. And everyone was going, "We're all going for a big night out now. We've had such a good feeling now." And I'm just going to walk home. I want to feel this. There's a great story. Bob Paisley, when Liverpool won the European Cup, they were all drinking champagne. They were, "Come on, Bob." He went, "No, I want to remember what this feels like."
Cool.
And that was exactly what I did. I just walked, or I floated home. And I remember going back to the monastery and saying to Father John, "I've felt nothing like that." And he said, "I think you're making your mind up about something." And he knew, and he was right, and that was it. So those two events gave me the confidence to think I could actually be a comedian. I could do a bit of show business.
And when you, of course, decided that you no longer wanted to be a monk, and you had, a more complete conversation, did you feel you were turning your back on 15 years of hard work and dedication, or did it not feel that way? Did it feel you were actually doing what you were always meant to do?
I think so. I mean, there's a great question, because I think my family were worried, because they'd finally
come to terms with
come
the
to terms with
concept of...
that's what he does. He's done 15 years. I remember telling me mum, "I'm leaving, Mum." And she said, "What are you going to do?" I said, "I'm going to be a comedian." Well, she wasn't laughing.
No, that's right. I can imagine.
And I think a lot of people were worried. And I can remember lodging with a family in North London who were brilliant, and I really loved them and still do. But I remember Keith saying to me, he said, "What happens if it doesn't work out?" Because when you start off as a comedian, you're not getting paid at all. You're just going out and doing open mic. And I can remember just filling my diary. I'd be doing some months 30 gigs a month for free. And that's what it takes. You do 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there. You might pay you for a half a spot. And I was quite lucky, because from the very beginning I was a compere. So I used to get residency work, and I'd get 40 quid here or 60 quid there to compare. But it did snowball quite quickly. But I remember the fear in Keith's eyes, saying, what happens if it doesn't work? And I said, well, it has to. It has to. And I believed I could do it. And I was so determined. I was so... I suppose I had a very thick skin, and you do have some terrible gigs at the beginning, and you have some horrific, deaths, and I couldn't wait to get back on stage after a death.
Yeah.
I wanted to put it right. I didn't want that feeling to linger, and I loved it. I was loving it. So I was dashing around London largely, and then it all of the things that I thought would never happen. I would think, well, I can do this level of club, but I could never do Jongleurs or the
Yes.
comedy store.
Some of the bigger venues.
Those are where the real comedians, the telly comedians are. And then you end up doing open mic there, and you end up getting employed there, and you think, I'm here. I'm doing this, and I never thought this was possible. And then you think, but I could never be in a sitcom.
No.
And then that sort of happened.
And just on that, sorry to interrupt you, Alfie. So how did you go from, as you say, being a job
Yeah.
to being in a sitcom? Because again, that's not
Yeah,
a
yeah.
logical thing just to happen.
Yeah, I do think, and this is a business thing as well. I didn't stop. I said yes to everything at the beginning. I would just say yes to anything.
And it's hard work.
Yeah.
The harder you work, the better
yeah,
odds.
yeah, and also the more opportunities come your way if you are good to work with, and if you just keep saying yes, I'll do that. I'll do that. So I didn't ask to be in a sitcom. I was just in a writing group at the BBC, and I was offered an audition. So I didn't apply or anything. They said, come along and audition for this part. It's about it was Johnny Vegas was playing a drug dealer in Manchester. This is going on tour now, by the way, as a
Is that right?
20th anniversary of this
Not seen
sitcom.
that yet.
Anyway, and I can remember a Northeast actor had been cast. So I thought, they won't cast two Northeast actors in a Northwest-based sitcom.
Yes, right.
It's a Manchester drug dealer. It'd be unlikely to have two Geordies or people from the Northeast there. So I thought, what could I do? And I was going for one part, and they said, actually, while you're here, would you read for this part? They gave me another part, and I looked at it, and I thought, I'll do this in Scouse, and it'll give me more chance of getting it because it's in the Northwest. And I remember one of the producers said, we loved the way you said a line in Scouse, and he was a gardener, this character, and it was purple sprouting broccoli. and that the look, the chances, but I put thought into it. Also, I did a lot of TV warm-up work. So again, that was offered to me. We've seen you in the comedy clubs. Would you come and do that? So I ended up going to Granada a lot and doing game shows, University Challenge, going on between the takes, warming the audience up. And from, again, being at the Comedy Store in Manchester, Coronation Street said, we've seen you, would you come and audition for this? I didn't ask them, I didn't send a CV in, so I went along and did a few episodes.
I mean, that must have been
bonkers,
pretty insane, because at that time, certainly in the Pit Village, everyone's watching Coronation Street. So this is big time stuff, right?
And not just in the Pit Village, everyone. I didn't realize how many people watched those kind of programs.
Soap operas, right?
Yeah, and so it was all people from my past got in touch, go in London or Ireland, or we've just seen you in Coronation Street.
That's huge.
And it was a big bank holiday, strong storyline. I was just playing a comedy paramedic, and it was just a few episodes, but it was massive. And again, that was just by saying yes. I hadn't auditioned. It was a lot of luck, but I was working constantly, and just make myself available.
Well, you've got to be exposed. You have to be visible. You need to put yourself in a situation to create an opportunity, right? Even though you may not have applied, you did say yes to be in the writing group, which led to all of the things you've just talked about.
And radio included. So I would just go on late night shows in Manchester, BBC Manchester, doing a paper review. I used to go on BBC Scotland every week, where I had a feature called What's It All About, Alfie, I was doing a podcast. I was doing a podcast in 2008 with Justin Moorhouse from Phoenix Nights, and he had a big radio show on, I think it's called Hits Radio now, and he was he's a great friend, and we had a podcast. Well, it was his podcast in 2008. Imagine if we kept that going.
That's right.
Yeah. So again, that was just by saying, yes, I'll do that. I'll give that a go. And then I ended up getting the job on BBC Newcastle in the same way, where the boss asked Justin, do you know any Northeast comedians who could do an afternoon show where you interview celebrities, play a bit of music, who would fit the bill? And he recommended me, and I, again, hadn't auditioned for it. I didn't ask to do it, but I ended up doing it. Very lucky.
Incredible. And obviously you mentioned earlier that you appeared on Britain's Got Talent.
Yes.
Which is a huge
Yeah.
show that many viewers will have watched dozens of times over on a Saturday evening with family. How was that experience?
Well, again, didn't ask to be on it. They came to me double act partner, who's a lot younger than me, and he's a lot more enthusiastic. And he loved the show, and he got in touch with me. He said, Britain's Got Talent have been in touch. They've seen our YouTubes, and we did impressions. So I said, oh, I don't want to do that. I'd actually never seen it, but I was aware of it because you see the little clips on YouTube and stuff. And all I was aware of was this, when they buzz people off. And I had 2 little kids, and I thought, I don't want to get buzzed off on that and have them getting picked on in the playground, or your dad's rubbish. And I just thought, it's too much of a risk. This seems to be a show just about the judges. This does not seem to be, from what I'd seen, I thought it was too much of a risk. I said to my wife, I'm not doing that. My wife said, you are. Because she said, well, why are you out doing all of these sketches, putting it on YouTube, if you don't want to do something with it? All right, well, I better run it by the BBC just to double check. And my boss at the time there said, I think you should do it because you'd have a right to reply if they did stitch you up.
Oh, totally.
All right, but it's still a risk, and you could still get buzzed off. And as it happens, we didn't. We got 4 yeses and a standing ovation, and it was all I wanted from the whole experience was, because I did it for my mate, really. I already had the job that you do Britain's Got Talent to get.
Yes.
So, and I remember Deck knew me from many years ago. I trained to be a priest with his brother.
Wow.
Who was the Catholic priest at the cathedral in Newcastle, Father Dermot. So I went in the wings to go on stage, and Deck said, what are you doing here? I said, as if to say, you don't need to do this. And I went, I'm giving it a go. He went, good luck. And we went on, and we had a great time. All I wanted was a good YouTube clip, and we got a great YouTube clip. So job done. It was just a phenomenal experience. It was it's a whole of the podcast. I could tell you the whole story, because it's just an adventure from beginning to end, and all of the stuff that happens behind the scenes is absolutely fascinating. It's such a well-oiled machine. It's such a fascinating thing to see and be part of, but it does not play with your adrenaline all day, and you're almost held hostage backstage. Now going to this camera crew here, tell them about this, now come over here, and then now come backstage while people are being buzzed off the other side of the curtain, and it goes right through the building, and you stood beside a Romanian accordionist dressed as Superman, trying to explain what you do with this guy. It's just nutty,
And how did you guys fare in Britain's Got Talent?
Well, it's a very odd situation. So the 4 yeses, you're going through. Simon Cowell says, I want you to do a song next time. I want you to do a big production number and everything. So, and then they told us we're not going through, because they had 2 impressionists who were going through. So the way it looks on TV is if you've failed an audition, but we never did another audition.
Right.
So in that sense, there's a lot of TVs like this, there's a lot of smoke and mirrors, but that sort of served us well, because we never got buzzed off. We never got a second audition. We got this brilliant YouTube clip, brilliant story. And then what sort of benefited us was we didn't go through, and these other two impressionists did. And there was sort of a little outcry in the press, and it was in the tabloids. Mimic Men outraged, they should have gone through, and there was a lot of push online. Well, that was great. So we got 3 million hits on YouTube, and we got the gig afterwards doing corporate gigs. Like a lot of people who do well on Britain's Got Talent, they can build a career on that, on cruise ships and on the corporate circuit. But unfortunately, I couldn't pursue it. I felt sorry for me mate, really, because I had a job. I had the job at the radio, so I couldn't do it.
And I think that the point you made earlier is you always need to know why you're doing something.
Yes.
And as long as you get from something what you intended, then actually it's just to be celebrated.
That'll do.
And often the people who do best from some of these Britain's Got Talent type shows are people who don't win.
Yes.
Use it as a platform to raise profile, which I get what you're saying.
Yes, absolutely. And I can remember us being asked to the Hilton not long after. Ant and Dec were there, half of their ITV mates and footballer mates and pop stars, and every table had people you'd recognise.
Yes.
And we were asked to do our spot.
Awesome.
Well, at about 11 o'clock at night, when they're all absolutely hammered, my mate was white. It was harder than Britain's Got Talent, because it was just a room full of smashed celebrities.
There you go. And they are intimately close, and I bet they were very happy to give you feedback.
Oh, they would. Well, actually, because Carol had asked us to do a production number, a song, I said, we do the song. We do the song now. I said, you can't heckle a song. So we'll do that. I said, there'll be a right mess at first. They're not going to listen to us. I said, but when we get into the song, they'll quieten down. That's exactly what happened. It went great.
Awesome.
But it was a leery 11 o'clock at night. It looked like an impossible gig, but we turned it around. It was great.
And obviously, Alfie, you are just a busy man. And by that, I mean, we've talked about comedy. We've talked about, the phenomenal work you do when it comes to comparing and hosting events. We haven't even talked about your huge interest in art.
Yeah.
Let me ask, of all of the things that you do, truly, where do you get the most joy and where do you get the most enjoyment?
I do love drawing. That just, you can't worry about anything else when you're doodling, when you're drawing. Just before this, I was in a cafe around the corner with my sketchbook. I take the sketchbook everywhere, and I just love the peace of that, the tranquility of that. That takes me right back to drawing as a kid.
Gosh.
So I love that. But what I love most is variety. I'm very lucky that I get to do all these different things, because I don't think I've got the brain or the type of personality to just do one thing all the time. I have had to narrow things. I have had to discipline myself and go, right, you really need to focus a bit more on this, and some other things need to take a bit of a backseat or be out of view, because it just means you're just seen as a jack of all trades and the master of none if you're not a little bit more focused. That's where, again, business people are just so really, really laser focused, and I've learned a lot from that. And I'm still learning, and I am getting better at that.
And obviously you mentioned when you were younger, Alfie, perhaps you weren't money motivated and you didn't have a good knowledge of money. Has that changed now that, clearly you are very successful in so many different areas? Has that changed?
It's still a work in progress.
Right.
But I do have some very good friends who guide me and tell me off and say, stop doing that, do that. Don't ask for that, ask for that. And I remember doing so many charity gigs when I was on the radio for free, for nothing. And I remember I did a really big one that had a lot of bells and whistles, and I learned a song, I shot a little movie. It took days and days. Gosh, I did it all for free, and I thought, why not? It's a really good cause. And a business pal of mine sat me down and he said, "What can I ask you what you got paid?" I said, "Well, nothing." I said, "It's for a great cause." He went, "The lighting guy got paid." The sound guy got paid. The events company got paid. And I'm going, yeah, but I'm on the radio. I can't be seen to be taking money for this. And he went, the people who work for the charity got paid. And the bit that got me when the guy who turned up to do the raffle got paid. And I went, no. And he went, he did. And he should have done. And he went, it's, he said, you deserve it. And he told me to, and this has helped a lot. He said, pick a charity you really like. Do everything for them for free. That's your chosen charity. He said, and then you can validly say to anyone else, look, I do all this for free for them. I can't do everything for free. Otherwise, you won't be at home. You'll just be out all the time. I was out a lot doing stuff for free. So that was it. I chose the Sick Children's Trust. I'm an ambassador for them. I still do everything for free for them, and I love it. I love what they stand for. I love what they do, not just in the Northeast, but around the country. They're just so good. I'm away later this month facilitating their away day.
Awesome.
They recreate their vision of that, and I love it. But it means I can then fairly say, and I'm still uncomfortable with it when a good cause or another charity will say, can you help us? Can you do this for us? Say, yeah, but I've got to ask for something.
It's interesting because your willingness to help, your keenness to support people, charities, businesses, just absolutely speaks volumes. And it's so refreshing to hear you not be money motivated, because 99.999% of the people that perhaps we have the opportunity to meet on podcasts like this are completely focused on creating value, and I mean pound shooting and plenty. So your focus on helping others, sometimes at a cost to you, is so genuinely inspiring, Alfie.
Well,
I just wanted to say that because
well, thank you.
I'm really inspired by this conversation.
Yes and no, I would say, because sometimes you can do more if you're doing less. And sometimes I have had that buckshot scattergun approach. I'm here, there, I'm everywhere. And I'm always in danger of going down that road, and I'll have to pull myself back and just be a bit more disciplined, because I could probably be of more value to some places if I was a little bit more. And I'm trying to do more of that.
Yes, albeit, as you said earlier, variety is important to you. And actually, you wouldn't be where you are now if you hadn't allowed yourself to focus in on lots of different things simultaneously.
100%.
So perhaps no regrets in that.
None.
You talked earlier about sometimes wanting to dial down your optimism level for the benefit of those who are less optimistic. Is that something you actually do?
Yeah, I think I was very lucky when we trained to be a priest at Ushaw College in Durham. We did a Myers-Briggs personality course. And I remember being, you get, I don't know if you've done Myers-Briggs.
Indeed.
You get 4 letters, and at the time I think I was ENTP. And there was only one guy who was completely opposite to me. And we used to visit prison together. And he was dead quiet, wouldn't talk. I was off the scale, annoying extrovert. Way upbeat, I was very full of beans all the time. I'd talk all the time. I'd fill any gap if there was any silence. And so I had no problem running. I was about 20 or something, and I was running a discussion group to murderers and whatever in Durham prison. And it wasn't easy, because whatever you discussed always came back to how horrendous the conditions were in Durham at the time. So you had to really give it some thought, and I would try and come up with pure escapism. That you've got to be careful. You can't say, where would you like to go on holiday? Because they're in prison. So I would come up with, who's your favourite fictional character from TV? Just to try and let them escape somewhere else, or something to do with singers or something like that. And we go around. I remember getting to my mate who I was running this with, and he went, I'm not quite sure today. I'll have to pass. And I came back to me, and we got in the car, and I went, it's hard enough running this. If you don't join in, how can you expect? I was getting really annoyed. And then we did the Myers-Briggs. And he was completely opposite to me. And I thought all of the time, we did some great exercises where all the extroverts sit over there, all the introverts sit over there. You describe them, you describe them. And we was calling them boring bastards, and they were calling us or loud mouths. We don't like them. And suddenly this realization after the Myers-Briggs, the penny dropped. All the time I'd been thinking, I wish he'd talk. He'd been thinking, I wish he'd shut up. So I used that personality test to work on my personality and my own self-awareness. Developed. I also did a counseling course at the same time where you learn to listen deeply. And the next time, and so I held right back after that. And guess what? He started to join in. He started to take a lead. I started to listen more. I started to work on my own shadow side. And the next time I did a Myers-Briggs personality test was when Charlie Charlton and myself started to do the radio show together. And we did a test to see what the different levels of personality should be and what the high end character and the low level character. And so we played about with that. And when we did the test, I was an introvert.
Wow.
And I am now quite shy. This might come as a surprise when it comes to, say, we were on a big table like this at a function. I get quite uncomfortable with one conversation tables where it's, what do you think? And what do you think? And it's, oh, they're going to come to me next. I'm much happier just chatting to the person next to me. And I will usually just accidentally interview them and just ask them about themselves and not want to talk about me at all. And I'm happy like that, but it's lack of awareness is very, very common, and it causes a lot of damage in a lot of different places. And I think it's really, really healthy to look at what you look like and how you come across. And I hope my self-awareness is something I'll constantly work on.
And do you think, as a consequence of being aware, do you think that your personality now has become diluted as you've pursued being more palatable to the majority?
Yeah, I think I try and make things not about me. If I'm hosting an event, I'm not there to steal the show.
No.
I'm there to make the show better for everybody else. If I'm hosting a comedy night, I will be funny, but I will try and hold it back. If I'm just about to introduce a new act, I'll give them a really good introduction. It's about them and not me. And the same when I was on the radio and I'm hosting panels, I always try and make it about the people who are on the stage and make sure everyone has a good time. That's my job. That's my task. And I think sometimes you've been brilliant, by the way, today interviewing me. And you've done research. You know everything. You haven't opened a book. You haven't looked at a note, which I love. But at the same time, you haven't made it about you at all. And that is not what everyone does.
Totally. You're right. Fascinatingly, though, there is a risk, isn't there, when you are self-aware and when you're trying to get on with everyone. There's a risk, isn't there, that you do become diluted.
Yeah.
In fact, a much less impactful, less confident version of yourself, as you're trying to sort of accommodate others who perhaps don't have the confidence you do, don't have the willingness to contribute as you do. So how would you sort of suggest that any viewers who are in that predicament would deal with that? Because I think people have to be real with who they are. And if people don't like that, then sometimes, hey, this is life. You can't please everyone.
Well, I think for me, I've found an outlet for, I suppose, showing off now. With the keynote speaking now. And again, this didn't come from me. It came from a good friend of mine, Martin, who I was on his podcast. And afterwards, he said, what are you going to do after you leave the BBC? What are you going to do? And I said, not quite sure. And it was him who told me, you've got expertise in speaking. You've got expertise in public speaking and how to do it. And I said, yeah, but I haven't got a piece of paper. He went, you've done it for over 30 years.
Mm.
You give sermons in cathedrals, in churches, you've done the Comedy Store, you've done 15 years on the radio. You can coach people.
Yeah.
And I thought, yes, and I never thought of that. And since I've started doing it, I really enjoy it. And I've accepted, and I think it's good that you share your medals.
Yeah.
So I'm all for humility and being modest and all that sort of stuff. But you will get nowhere unless you share your stories. And that has become my real passion. And I do get frustrated when charities come up to me and say to me, "Do you know your social media is very good. You're out there all the time. I'm going, why aren't you? You've got better stories than me. I'm a bloke with a phone.
Yeah.
You have an incredible mission. You've got lots of money to raise. You should be banging the drum and telling everyone about the brilliant stuff you do." So that's become my new thing now, and I'm really enjoying it. I'm really enjoying going into businesses and charities and to individuals and saying, "Get that, don't sit on that story. Get those stories out there." And you sat on stories you didn't even know that
Mm.
needed to be told.
Right.
So I've got different exercises that I use to get those stories out of people. It's great fun.
At the beginning of the podcast, Alfie, you
Yeah.
talked about when you were in your early years drawing a picture of a priest
Yeah.
when you were asked, what is it you want to be when you're bigger?
Yeah.
Obviously, you're not a priest today.
No.
And, you know, we've spent a lot of time just talking about the things that are now important to you and, of course, the areas whereby you've achieved significant success. When you look back and think about that boy who perhaps didn't think that what you've achieved was achievable, how does it make you feel?
Well, I'm not one for looking back a lot, to be honest. I'm a very industrious person.
Mm.
I'm very, very restless, and I'm always trying to look to the future and look to what's next and hopefully enjoy a bit of now, because now is all we've got.
Yeah.
And I don't look back probably enough. I suppose if I did and you made me, I would think I would.
Which you should, and I am.
Yes, yeah. I suppose I should be. Wow, I can't believe a lot of these things happened to me. I can't, it wasn't meant to be when I was a kid. Kids like me didn't end up doing lots of the things I've done. So I feel very lucky, very fortunate. But I also think you make your own luck by working hard, taking opportunities, saying yes to things that other people would run a mile from. Give it a go.
Yeah, and I find that whether it be the law of attraction or similar good things seem to happen to great people, and therefore I'm not surprised that
Well,
many good things have happened to you.
That's very kind, Carl.
Alfie, it has been truly incredible to have you on my podcast.
Loved it.
Huge thanks, and I'm sure our viewers, like me, will just be in awe of some of the things you've achieved, and your selflessness and your absolute focus on doing good for others just steeps through everything you've done. So huge thanks for joining me.
Keep doing what you do. You're brilliant.
It has been a true pleasure having Alfie Dewey feature on my Confessions of an Entrepreneur podcast today. It's been truly inspiring finding out a little bit more about how a boy from a local pit village in Durham has become not only a national, but in my opinion, international treasure and icon. Alfie is selfless. Everything he does for a greater good. And often the things he does benefit others and not directly Alfie. I think that probably comes not only from the very modest and very humbled upbringing that his parents afforded Alfie, but of course, as a man from the Northeast, he just wants to see the Northeast do well. Alfie is someone who clearly continually works hard to improve his odds of success. And whilst he, in a very modest way, describes his success as a coincidence and perhaps largely as a consequence of luck, my view is you create your own luck, and the harder you work, the luckier you get. Of course, Alfie, having spent his first 15 years of adulthood as a priest, which is perhaps where he was able to truly spend time inspiring, supporting, and caring for others, which are true traits that Alfie just has in spades, he's been able since to use that to scratch the true itch he has, which was largely, I think, instilled in Alfie as a consequence of his father, who back in the day used to enjoy in the local worksman club getting on the stage, singing a song, telling a joke, and making people feel good. Of course, Alfie now is a highly successful, acclaimed comedian. He is a drawer. He is an author. He is an artist. He is someone who stands up and compares significant events regionally and nationally. And of course, he's a huge, huge ambassador for so many significant charities in the Northeast. Very rarely do people make me stop. Alfie has done that today. His personality is without doubt infectious. He is just a really great guy doing great things for the benefit of others. And for sure, I think if we had more Alfies in this world, we would have a happier place. You have been watching Confessions of an Entrepreneur, powered by RG. If you would like to download this or any other podcast in our Confessions of a series, please do from wherever you download your podcasts. But for now, it's been a pleasure having you and Alfie Dewey on my podcast today, and we look forward to seeing you on future Confessions of an Entrepreneur podcasts.